Chapter 5. Unnoticed. I shuffled into the hallway and fell into the crowd of soldiers lurching toward the stairs and exit. It was quiet except for the clicking of boots on the floor and pockets of worried murmuring. What would happen or what they'd say to us once we got outside was anyone's guess. Step after step, we all climbed out of the concrete pit. The smell of fresh air filled my nostrils. After all of the killing, it smelled like life. The sun was starting to peek over the horizon and kiss the hard-packed earth of the yard. The orange light gave the thick, concrete walls of Fort Romkan a soft glow. The feeling of safety the walls had provided shimmered and vanished like a mirage. The soldiers who were not stationed in the bunker were filing out of the above-ground barracks. I spotted a few stragglers in the guard towers and on the wall's walkways, hesitant to come down from the security of their perches. I strayed from the group that had emerged with me from Fort Romkan's underground bunker and wedged myself into the most crowded mass of people that I could. I didn't want to be called out or spotted by anyone who might know me. Fortunately, it wasn't hard to get lost in the crowd. With every soldier stationed at Fort Romkan being called away from their posts, the yard of the base was absolutely packed with haggard bodies. At the head of the group, on an elevated platform, was the officer from the previous day, who had welcomed us back to the fort after our assignment to shepherd civilians out of harm's way. He was winged by several other high-ranking officers on either side of him. Despite the early morning tragedy, he was immaculately dressed in his uniform. He had taken the time to flawlessly position and pin every single one of his medals and insignias. His inky black hair was expertly styled. His beady eyes swept over the gaunt group like a vulture at a buffet. I quickly bowed my head when I felt his gaze pass over where I was standing. I didn't care what he had to say. I was looking for a way out of here. The front gate was ajar, and a few teams of soldiers and support staff were trickling into the yard from outside the fort's walls. Whatever this officer was going to say, he wanted to make sure every single soul still alive heard it. The vehicles were lined up in neat rows where they always were. There was no way I could simply waltz up to one and drive it out of here without being noticed. I heard the pop, pop, pop of someone tapping on a microphone followed by a sharp whine. It looked like I was going to be subjected to hearing the officer's speech after all. A hush fell over the crowd. He cleared his throat.
Brave soldiers,
He began. He paused for effect, letting the forced silence wash over the crowd of tired and confused soldiers. I frowned. Starting with a compliment, this officer had the makings of a politician already.
most of you have already heard the announcement, but for those of you that haven't, please try and control your emotions.
He continued.
The leader of our valiant army has suddenly and unexpectedly died.
Well, that's one way to put being killed by an untouchable assassin. Nervous chatter broke out amongst the crowd. The officer raised his hand for silence, and the crowd complied.
Not all of you know who I am. I am Brigadier General Vernon Huxley. I was a close ally, confident, and dare I say, a friend of our leader, General Dunn. With our genius leader gone, you are probably aware that our chances in this war have fallen considerably.
Huxley boomed. A chill ran down my spine. Colonel Abbott's prediction was correct. I just wasn't expecting the other higher-ups to have already written their speeches. This man was good with words. People who are good with words are dangerous.
But do not think we have failed.
He soothed.
At this time, I will assume command of the armed forces. I will bear the burden of leadership. I will steer our ship through these troubling waters.
Huxley announced.
And all of you, our brave crew, will be reassigned to new locations. Some of you will go home to rest and reunite with your loved ones before your next assignment. The remainder will move to other areas where your hands are sorely needed.
With each sentence, he thrust a hand in a different direction, as if pushing pieces on a game board. Despite his flowery words, it was clear that he was preparing us for a surrender. Anyone who had spent a little time listening to heavily decorated men talk could see that. They use a lot of words to say almost nothing.
Fort Romkan
He spread his arms and gestured to the structures of steel and concrete.
will be decommissioned. Do not think we are abandoning it. It will stay standing as a monument to our deceased leader and to all of you who protected it and called it home.
Declared Brigadier General Huxley.
For now, we will work on clearing this base of equipment and personnel. After finishing, squads will either be reassigned immediately or put on temporary leave.
Even though I was trying to lay low, I scrunched up my face in disbelief. Fort Romkan was near our border with Satru. It didn't make sense to empty this fortress of soldiers. Huxley had to have another motive for wanting people to leave. The other soldiers didn't notice, however. The relief that spread throughout the crowd was palpable. The prospect of a brief respite from the war was a tantalizing treat for every soldier in the army. Huxley was massaging the heart of every homesick soldier listening to him, and it was enough to win over almost everyone in the crowd. The worried looks on faces turned to cautious smiles. After all, the death of the out-of-reach and rarely seen leader of the military was nothing compared to holding a loved one. Even my own jaw unclenched. If the orders were to clear out and move, I might not even have to make a run for it. If luck was on my side, some rest and relaxation back home were in the cards for me. Colonel Abbott was right that I wouldn't be safe outside of the bunker, but slipping away unnoticed would be a lot easier than stealing a car and escaping in a cloud of dust. The microphone hissed again.
I almost forgot.
He confessed. A thin smile stretched across his pale face.
Most of you will receive your orders from your direct superiors to help us pack up and move out of Fort Romkan to other locations. However, if you were one of our fine people stationed in the underground bunker, I ask that you come this way for debriefing. All of you have just been through a traumatic and important event, and we'd like to lend you our services and sympathies.
He said through a toothy, sympathetic smile that almost looked human.
This includes both soldiers and support staff. If you have this patch on your uniform,
Huxley held up the insignia everyone who worked in the underground bunker had on their uniform's arm.
please form a line here.
He cooed. From where I was standing, I could see that the patch he had in his hand had been roughly cut from a uniform and was still flecked with blood. My hand shot up to cover the patch on my own arm. I tried to make it appear as if I had developed a sudden, severe itch on my arm. But what I was actually doing was clawing at the patch's stitching, desperately trying to remove it from my uniform. The singular mass of bodies started to break off into smaller groups. The cloud of anonymity that the crowd provided began to dissipate. While those who had nothing to fear from a chat with Brigadier General Huxley had started to line up, I stuck tight to the biggest remaining group. Thread after thread, I continued to work at prying off the patch that marked me as a bunker dweller. Person after person peeled off from the group. Every time a person walked away, I became less safe. With a rip, the patch came off, the loose threads dangling like raw nerves. I stuffed it into my pocket and confidently shouldered my way into a group of people heading toward the vehicles. There was already an officer waiting for us. The gruff man didn't so much as look up from his clipboard. I was fine with that.
Get these vehicles moved out of here and to Retreat Point Echo. We'll redistribute them to other bases and send some back to the capital from there.
He yawned.
Step to it.
I scrambled into the driver's seat of the nearest truck and fired it up. The engine churned and struggled to come to life. I tapped the gas and it chugged forward toward the base's open gates. I had avoided being found out, but I was far from safe. I trusted that no one from the bunker would give me or my secret up during a casual questioning. But when they checked the personnel list, they would know someone was missing. If I could get far enough away, I could melt back into my old life. Even though I hadn't found out what happened to my brother, staying alive was still my #1 priority. As long as I was still alive, there was a chance I could find out what happened to him. I held my breath as I passed through the gates. It was like traveling through a portal from one world to another. I was leaving the last 2 years of my life behind as I set off through the war-torn landscape.